The notification arrived on a Tuesday, an otherwise unremarkable day in Dr. Ilara Voss's meticulous academic calendar. A holographic interface materialized over her desk at the University of New Alexandria, disrupting the careful arrangement of ancient language charts and star maps that had become her second home. Notification of summons, Cosmic Senate Assembly, attendance, mandatory, delegate status, citizen of Earth. Ilara blinked twice, certain there had been some bureaucratic error. The Cosmic Senate, that mythical gathering of advanced civilizations, had long denied Earth any formal representation. Humans were regarded as mere curiosities at best, primitives at worst, permitted only occasional observer status at the fringes of galactic politics. Verification requested. She spoke to the shimmering interface, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. Verification confirmed, the artificial voice replied with synthetic serenity. Dr. Ilara Voss, xenolinguist, historian of pre-contact Earth. You have been designated Earth's representative at the 3112th Cosmic Senate Assembly. Transport arrives in 48 hours. Prepare for extended absence. The hologram dissipated, leaving Ilara alone with shelves of ancient texts and the sudden, vertiginous sensation of being thrust onto a stage she had only ever studied from afar. She had dedicated her life to understanding the intricate languages and protocols of interstellar diplomacy, never imagining she would be called to practice them. Outside her office window, the rebuilt spires of New Alexandria reached toward an evening sky where the first stars were beginning to appear. 3,000 years after humanity's tentative steps beyond their solar system, Earth remained a peripheral player in cosmic affairs, recovering still from what historians called the Silent Era. Centuries of isolation following the Great Collapse. Ilara's fingers traced the edge of an ancient star chart, one of her most treasured possessions, showing constellations that no longer matched the altered sky. Something was happening, something unprecedented. And somehow, impossibly, she was at its center. "Why me?" she whispered to the empty room. The stars, as always, offered no immediate answer. The transport vessel that arrived was unlike anything that typically visited Earth's orbit. Sleek and luminescent, it seemed to bend light around its hull, a technology far beyond Earth's current capabilities. The pilot, a being with iridescent skin that shifted colors with each movement, offered no explanation beyond the terse statement that Ilara was expected. As Earth diminished to a blue speck behind them, Ilara stood by the viewing portal, clutching a small bag containing only what she deemed essential: her research notes, a few personal items, and the ancient star chart she could not bring herself to leave behind. The journey passed in a disorienting blur of faster-than-light travel, during which Ilara attempted to prepare by reviewing her knowledge of Senate protocols and galactic political factions. "We approach the Senate Nexus," announced the pilot after what felt like both moments and eternities. Beyond the portal, space itself seemed to part like a curtain, revealing what appeared to be an artificial planet, a perfect sphere of impossible architecture, suspended in the void. The Senate Nexus, the mobile capital of cosmic governance, currently positioned at the gravitational equilibrium point between three major star systems. "It moves," Ilara murmured, recalling the texts she had studied. "The Nexus repositions itself for each major assembly to maintain neutrality." "Correct," the pilot replied, displaying the first hint of approval. "The Nexus goes where balance requires. This cycle, it hovers between the territories of the Zarnathi Empire, the Miruthan Confederation, and the Outer Rim Independence." As they approached, Ilara could see countless vessels of all configurations converging on the Nexus, representatives from hundreds of worlds, some recognizable from Earth's limited diplomatic contact, others completely unknown to human knowledge. The landing bay that received them was cavernous, filled with the cacophony of 1,000 species communicating in their native tongues. Ilara's linguist's ear was immediately overwhelmed by the symphony of clicks, whistles, modulated frequencies, and pheromone exchanges that comprise the complex communication networks of advanced civilizations. A stern-looking human in a formal military uniform approached as Alara disembarked. His posture was rigid, his expression carefully neutral. "Dr. Voss, I'm Captain Niles, Earth Security Attaché. I've been assigned to ensure your safety during these proceedings." Alara studied him with curiosity. "I wasn't aware Earth had security personnel at the Senate level. We don't, typically. But given the unusual nature of your summons, exceptions were made." His eyes darted around the bay, assessing potential threats with practiced efficiency. "Please follow me. You're scheduled for preliminary briefing." As they navigated through corridors that seemed to defy conventional geometry, Alara noticed the reactions their presence elicited. Some beings recoiled slightly, others whispered among themselves, and a few displayed what she recognized as expressions of outright hostility. "We're not particularly welcome, are we?" she observed quietly. Captain Niles's jaw tightened. "Earth has long been considered a curiosity. Dr. Voss, now suddenly we have a podium in the main chamber. It's causing diplomatic ripples." "But why? Why now? Why me?" "That," said Captain Niles, pausing before a massive doorway inscribed with symbols from 100 worlds, "is what everyone wants to know." The briefing chamber was occupied by a collection of beings that represented the diversity of the Senate's power structure. Floating orbs of light hovered beside crystalline entities. Beings of pure energy contained in specialized suits conversed with massive, tentacled creatures that breathed through complex apparatus. At the center of this gathering stood a tall, slender figure with skin the color of burnished copper and eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. When this being spoke, the translator in Alara's ear rendered the words in perfect, accentless English. "Dr. Alara Voss of Earth, I am Mirathon, arbiter of the neutral faction. We welcome you to the Nexus." Alara performed the formal greeting she had studied, a slight bow with open palms displayed. "I am honored, arbiter, though I confess to considerable confusion regarding my presence here." A ripple of what might have been laughter or derision moved through the assembly. "Indeed," continued Mirathon, "your confusion is understandable. Earth has not held a formal position in Senate proceedings for, well, ever." "Then why now?" Alara pressed, aware she was violating protocol by questioning so directly, but unable to contain her academic curiosity. A new voice entered the conversation, harsh, guttural, emanating from a bulky figure whose armored exoskeleton gleamed with decorative insignia denoting military rank. "Because something has awakened that should have remained dormant," the figure growled. "Something your kind triggered." The translator identified this speaker as Admiral Kravtzor of the Zarnathi Empire, one of the most powerful military forces in the known galaxy, and historically, one of the most aggressive toward less technologically advanced species. "I don't understand," Alara said, looking between the Admiral and the Arbiter. Mirathon gestured, and a holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber. It showed a three-dimensional representation of what appeared to be an ancient device, a cube covered in inscriptions that seemed to shift and change as Alara watched. "This is the source block," explained Mirathon, "an artifact predating all known civilizations, discovered millennia ago at the founding of the Senate. It has been dormant, studied, but silent, for all recorded history. Until 3 standard months ago, when it began emitting signals. Signals specifically resonating with Earth frequencies," added Admiral Kravtzor, his tone accusatory. "Signals that have disrupted the entire hierarchical structure of the Senate." Alara stared at the hologram, transfixed by the shifting symbols. "I've seen these inscriptions before," she whispered, almost to herself. The chamber fell suddenly, completely silent. "Explain," demanded the Admiral. With trembling fingers, Alara reached into her bag and withdrew the ancient star chart. "These symbols, they appear on this chart. It's a pre-collapse artifact, thousands of years old." Mirathon approached, examining the chart with eyes that seemed to see beyond its physical form. "This is unexpected. The chart contains source code script. How did humans come to possess this? It was discovered in ruins beneath what was once called the Library of Alexandria. Alara explained, her academic passion momentarily overriding her anxiety. I've spent years attempting to decipher it. And have you? The question came from a new voice, soft, melodic, belonging to a being that seemed to shimmer between states of matter, never quite solid or liquid or gas. Partially, Alara admitted. I believed it showed star configurations from Earth's ancient past, but some elements never aligned with any known astronomical record. The shimmering being drifted closer. I am Jikar, last memory of the vanished. Your chart does not show Earth's past. Dr. Voss, it shows Earth's connection to what came before. Captain Niles stepped forward protectively. What exactly does that mean? It means, interjected Admiral Kraftzor, that your primitive planet somehow activated the source block, which has now disrupted Senate protocols to include an Earth representative, you. He pointed a clawed appendage at Alara. And tomorrow, you will address the full Senate Assembly. Address them? About what? Alara asked, alarm rising in her voice. About why the most ancient power in known space suddenly demands that humanity have a voice, replied Miruthan. About what message Earth has for the cosmos that is so important it required breaking 3,000 years of established order. The assembly dispersed shortly after, leaving Alara with Captain Niles and a profound sense of dread. They were escorted to quarters prepared for the Earth delegation, modest by Senate standards, but luxurious compared to anything on Earth. This is insanity, Alara murmured as the door sealed behind them. I'm a scholar, not a diplomat. I have no authority to speak for Earth. Apparently something thinks you do, replied Niles, conducting a security sweep of the chambers with practiced efficiency. The question is what? And why? And how? Alara paced the room, her mind racing through possibilities, each more implausible than the last. Captain, there must be some mistake. I study ancient languages and pre-collapse history. I have no special knowledge of this source block. Yet you recognized its symbols. From a chart I've spent years failing to fully decipher. She ran her hands through her hair in frustration. This is beyond absurd. The Senate contains civilizations thousands of years more advanced than Earth. What could they possibly need from us? A soft chime interrupted her spiraling thoughts, signaling a visitor at their door. Captain Niles tensed, hand moving instinctively toward a weapon concealed beneath his uniform. Identify yourself, he called. Jikar of the Vanished, came the melodic response. I come alone, with information Dr. Voss may find illuminating. Niles looked to Alara, who nodded after a moment's hesitation. The door slid open to reveal the shimmering, ever-changing form of the being from the briefing chamber. May I enter? Jikar asked, their form rippling with what might have been anxiety. Please. Alara gestured to a seating area designed to accommodate various physiologies. Jikar flowed into the space, their form settling into something approximating a seated position. I must speak quickly. There are factions who would prefer I remain silent on these matters. What matters? Asked Niles, remaining standing, positioned between the visitor and Alara. The true history of the Senate, the true place of Earth in the cosmic order. Jikar's form shimmered more intensely. My people, the Vanished, were once keepers of memory. We preserved histories others wished forgotten. And that's why they vanished? Alara asked softly. Precisely. Our planet was removed from existence. I survive only because I was off-world when it happened, carrying our collective memory. Jikar extended what might have been an appendage toward Alara's star chart, which lay on a nearby table. Your chart is more than a map. Dr. Voss, it is a key. A key to what? To understanding why the source block has awakened now, after eons of silence. To understanding why Earth, long dismissed as a backwater world, suddenly matters to powers that have spent millennia pretending it does not. Captain Niles crossed his arms. You're being cryptic. Necessarily so, replied Jikar. Direct knowledge can be extracted. Implications and hints are safer. Their form rippled again. Dr. Voss, when you address the Senate tomorrow, you will face pressure from all sides to support various political agendas. The Zarnadi will attempt to use Earth's sudden elevation to justify military expansion. The neutral faction will seek balance that maintains the status quo. And what should I do instead? Alara asked. Look to your chart. Look to the source block. They are connected in ways even I cannot fully articulate. Jikar began to move toward the door. One final piece of advice. When you stand at the podium labeled Citizen of Earth, remember that titles in the Senate are never accidental. Ponder why not Representative of Earth or Earth Delegate, but specifically Citizen. With that enigmatic statement, Jikar flowed out of the room, leaving Alara and Niles staring after them. Well, said Niles after a moment, that was suitably mysterious and unhelpful. Not entirely, Alara murmured, already reaching for her chart. They confirmed something I've suspected. This chart isn't just a star map. The configurations never made astronomical sense because they're not meant to be taken literally. She spread the chart on the table, studying the shifting symbols with renewed intensity. Captain, do you have any way to access information about the source block? Historical records, research data, anything? Niles hesitated. I might, but accessing such information would be noticed. We're already at the center of the Senate's attention. What's a little more scrutiny? Alara offered a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Besides, I'm supposed to address the most powerful assembly in known space tomorrow. I'd prefer not to do so in complete ignorance. After a moment's consideration, Niles nodded and produced a small device from his uniform. I'll see what I can find. The hours that followed were a frantic deep dive into restricted Senate archives, with Niles providing access to classified information that should have been well beyond Earth's clearance level. As the artificial night cycle of the Nexus deepened, patterns began to emerge that left Alara increasingly disturbed. The timeline doesn't add up, she said, gesturing to a holographic display showing the official history of the Senate's formation. According to these records, the Senate was established after the discovery of the source block approximately 12,000 years ago, when the founding species achieved interstellar travel. That tracks with what we've been told, Niles confirmed. Except for this. Alara highlighted a section of her chart, then compared it to an image of the source block. These symbols are identical, but according to Earth's archaeological record, my chart predates the Senate's founding by at least 15,000 years. Niles frowned. That's impossible. Earth couldn't have had contact with interstellar civilizations that far back. Unless... Alara's voice trailed off as a radical theory began to form in her mind. Unless the official history is wrong, unless Earth wasn't contacted by spacefaring civilizations. But was their origin? Completed a new voice from the doorway. Alara and Niles turned sharply to find Admiral Kravtzor of the Zarnathi Empire standing there, flanked by two guards in gleaming exoskeletons. How did you get in here? Demanded Niles, moving protectively toward Alara. Please. The Admiral scoffed. This is the Senate Nexus. There are no truly private spaces. He stepped forward, massive form dominating the room. I see you've been busy with your research. Dr. Voss. Finding inconsistencies in our carefully maintained historical record. Alara straightened, refusing to be intimidated despite the pounding of her heart. The record is false, isn't it? Earth wasn't some primitive world discovered by advanced civilizations. It was... A problem, interrupted Kravtzor. A complication in an otherwise elegant narrative. He gestured, and one of his guards activated a device that shut down all of Alara's displays. One that we have managed quite effectively for millennia. Until now, said Alara, until the source block awakened. Indeed. The Admiral's expression was unreadable through his exoskeletal features. Tomorrow, Dr. Voss, you will address the Senate. You will express Earth's gratitude for finally being recognized. You will pledge Earth's support to the existing power structure. And then you will return home, your curiosity satisfied, Your place in history, secured. And if I don't? The Admiral's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Then the consequences will extend far beyond your insignificant life. Earth has enjoyed peace and development under our distant supervision. That arrangement can change. Captain Niles stepped forward. Is that a threat, Admiral? It is reality. Captain, politics on a cosmic scale requires perspective. Kravzor turned to leave. I suggest you both get some rest. Tomorrow will be historic, one way or another. After the Zarnadi delegation departed, Ilara collapsed into a chair, the weight of responsibility suddenly crushing. They're terrified, she whispered. Whatever the truth is, it frightens them enough to threaten an entire planet. Niles was checking his security device, his expression grim. They've locked us out of the archives completely. It doesn't matter, Ilara said, looking down at her ancient chart. I think I understand enough now. The source block, this chart, they're connected to Earth's true history. A history someone has gone to great lengths to erase. But why? What could possibly be so important about Earth? Ilara traced the shifting symbols on her chart, watching as they seemed to respond to her touch. I don't know exactly, but tomorrow, I intend to find out. Sleep eluded Ilara that night. Instead, she pored over her notes, comparing the symbols on her chart with what she had seen of the source block, seeking patterns that might reveal deeper truths. By the time the Nexus's artificial dawn arrived, she had formed a theory so radical it would have cost her academic reputation on Earth. But here, in the shadow of the Senate, it was beginning to feel like the only explanation that made sense. Captain Niles appeared at her door as scheduled, now dressed in formal diplomatic attire that marked him as Earth's military attaché. His expression was solemn. It's time, Dr. Voss. Ilara nodded, gathering her chart and notes. She had opted for her formal academic robes, black with the silver trim of New Alexandria University, rather than the diplomatic uniform that had been provided. If she was to represent Earth, she would do so as herself, a scholar in search of truth. The journey to the main Senate chamber was a blur of corridors and security checkpoints, each more elaborate than the last. As they approached the massive doors that led to the assembly hall, Miruthan appeared, seeming to materialize from the very air. Dr. Voss, the arbiter greeted her. I trust you are prepared for your address. As prepared as one can be when thrust into a 3,000-year-old political landscape overnight. Ilara replied, unable to keep a hint of dry humor from her voice. Something like amusement flickered in Miruthan's cosmic eyes. Indeed, you should know that there has been discussion among the delegates regarding your appearance. Some believe your invitation is a malfunction, a glitch in the source block's awakening. And what do you believe, Arbiter? Miruthan studied her for a long moment. I believe that systems as ancient and complex as the source block do not malfunction. They reveal. They gestured toward the doors, which began to part. The Senate awaits. Dr. Voss, speak with care. The Senate chamber defied comprehension in its scale and design, a vast amphitheater that seemed to bend reality around its edges. It contained thousands of platforms, podiums, and specialized environments accommodating the biological and physical needs of countless species. The air shimmered with translation fields and atmospheric barriers, allowing beings who breathed acid to sit alongside those who required vacuum. At the very center of this impossible space stood a raised dais upon which rested the source block, the enigmatic cube whose awakening had precipitated Ilara's presence. From her position at the entrance, she could see its surface rippling with the same shifting symbols that adorned her chart. And there, directly facing the source block, stood a podium that had not existed 3 months earlier. A simple, unadorned structure bearing a single label, Citizen of Earth. A hush fell over the assembly as Ilara approached her designated position, conscious of thousands of eyes, sensory organs, and perceptual apparatuses focused on her every movement. Captain Niles took his place slightly behind her, a reassuring presence at her back. The session began with ceremonial procedures conducted in a language so ancient the translator struggled to render it comprehensibly. Miruthan, as arbiter of the neutral faction, officiated from a floating platform that allowed them to address all sections of the chamber equally. Delegates of the Cosmic Senate. The arbiter's voice resonated throughout the space. We convene the 3,412th Assembly in the presence of the Source Block, under the principles of the Founding Compact. Today's session includes an unprecedented addition, a representative from Earth, designated by the Source Block itself. A murmur rippled through the assembly, a sound comprised of thousands of different forms of communication expressing surprise, skepticism, or outright hostility. As is customary when a new voice joins our assembly, continued Miruthan, we invite the citizen of Earth to address the Senate. Alara stepped forward, placing her chart on the podium before her. The translator at her throat hummed, ready to convert her words into the myriad languages of the assembly. She had prepared remarks, careful, diplomatic statements that would satisfy Admiral Kraftzor's demands while revealing nothing of her discoveries. But as she looked out at the vast gathering, at civilizations that had voyaged between stars while humans were still mastering fire, she knew that such caution would betray not only herself, but whatever truth the Source Block had awakened to reveal. Delegates of the Cosmic Senate, she began, her voice steadier than she felt. I stand before you not as a diplomat or a politician, but as a scholar of history and language. I was summoned here without explanation, chosen by mechanisms I do not fully understand, to represent a planet that has long been relegated to the periphery of cosmic affairs. She paused, noting the attention of the assembly fixed upon her. Since my arrival, I've been instructed on what to say to you. I've been told to express gratitude for Earth's recognition. I've been threatened with consequences should I deviate from a script designed to maintain the status quo. A ripple of reaction moved through the chamber. From the corner of her eye, Alara could see Admiral Kraftzor rise slightly from his position, mandibles clicking in agitation. But I did not spend my life studying the past to become complicit in its falsification. Alara held up her chart. This artifact was discovered in the ruins of one of Earth's oldest centers of learning. It contains symbols identical to those found on the Source Block, symbols that predate the official founding of this Senate by thousands of years. The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices, prompting Miruthan to activate a resonance field that restored order. Dr. Voss, the arbiter interjected, these are serious implications. Do you have evidence beyond this single artifact? I have questions, Alara replied. Questions that emerged when I gained access to your historical archives. Questions about why the timeline of Senate formation contains irreconcilable discrepancies. Questions about why Earth, supposedly a primitive world of minimal importance, appears in your most ancient records with a frequency that defies coincidence. She turned to face the Source Block directly. But most importantly, I have questions about why this artifact, which supposedly predates all known civilizations, awakened specifically to demand Earth's voice be heard. As if in response to her words, the Source Block's surface began to pulse with increased intensity, the symbols flowing more rapidly across its faces. This is outrageous! Admiral Kraftzor's voice boomed across the chamber. The human speaks without knowledge, making wild accusations based on incomplete understanding. Yet the Source Block responds to her words, observed a delegate from a crystalline species, their voice chiming like bells. See how its patterns accelerate. Alara pressed her advantage. I believe the official history of the Senate, of all our civilizations, has been deliberately obscured. I believe Earth was not discovered by spacefaring races, but was instead their origin point. And I believe the Source Block has awakened now to correct this historical erasure. The chamber descended into chaos, with delegates shouting, gesticulating, and emitting various signs of agitation in their native forms of expression. Through it all, the Source Block continued to pulse, its symbols now flowing so rapidly they created a blur of light around its surface. Suddenly, a beam of energy shot from the block, striking Alara's chart where it lay on the podium. Instead of destroying it, the beam caused the chart to project its contents into the air above the assembly, a massive, three-dimensional representation of its symbols and star patterns. The chamber fell instantly silent. The projected image began to transform, the star patterns rearranging themselves into a configuration that slowly resolved into a recognizable map of the galaxy. But with Earth at its center, lines of connection radiating outward to the homeworlds of dozens of major Senate species. And then, impossibly, the source block spoke. The voice that emanated from the ancient cube was not truly a voice at all, but rather a direct transmission to the consciousness of every being present. A communication so fundamental it bypassed language entirely, arriving as pure meaning. Correction initiated, it conveyed. Historical integrity protocols activated. Mirithan, visibly shaken, addressed the block. What correction? What protocols? Earth, origin point, designated, first world, status, obscured by compact violation. Admiral Kravtzor rose from his position, his massive form trembling with what might have been rage or fear. This is a malfunction. The block cannot be trusted. Zarnathy Empire, primary violator of founding compact. Earth designation, deliberately obscured to facilitate power consolidation. The accusation hung in the air like a physical force. Ilara, standing at the center of this cosmic revelation, felt a strange calm descend upon her. The theory she had formed during her sleepless night was being confirmed in the most dramatic fashion possible. The source block is a historical safeguard, she said, understanding flowing through her. Created to prevent the very falsification that has occurred, Earth wasn't just another world, it was the first world, the origin point of interstellar civilization. Impossible, shouted a delegate from a gaseous species. Humans are biologically similar to many Senate species. If they were first, why are they not more advanced? The source block pulsed again. Cycle of civilization, recurring, Earth, multiple ascensions and collapses. Current iteration, seventh emergence. Alara's mind raced to process this information. We've risen and fallen before, she whispered, then raised her voice to address the assembly. Earth's history contains mysterious gaps. Periods where advanced civilizations seemingly appeared and disappeared without explanation. What if those weren't isolated incidents, but part of a larger pattern? What if humanity has achieved spacefaring status multiple times, only to collapse and begin again? And what if, added Jakar, their shimmering form now visible near the center of the chamber. Certain powerful factions preferred that Earth remain unaware of its own legacy. What if controlling the narrative of origin meant controlling the future of all civilizations? All eyes turned to Admiral Kravtzor, whose exoskeleton now bristled with defensive posturing. You cannot possibly believe this malfunctioning relic, the Admiral growled. The Zarnathy Empire has maintained peace for thousands of years. We have protected developing worlds, including Earth, from the harsh realities of cosmic politics. While systematically erasing their true heritage, countered Miruthon, their cosmic eyes now fixed on the Admiral with newfound suspicion. The neutral faction has long questioned the completeness of our historical records. This revelation explains many inconsistencies. The source block pulsed once more. Compact violation severity. Maximum consequences initiated. A wave of energy emanated from the cube, sweeping through the chamber. Ilara felt it pass through her like a warm breeze, but its effect on the technology of the Senate was immediate and dramatic. Weapons systems went offline. Communication arrays faltered. The very artificial gravity of the Nexus fluctuated momentarily. What's happening? Captain Niles asked, moving closer to Ilara. I believe, she replied, watching as the wave continued to spread beyond the chamber. That the source block is enforcing whatever original compact was violated. Admiral Kravtzor roared in frustration as his personal defenses flickered and died. This is an attack. The humans have somehow weaponized the source block against the Senate. No. Miruthan's voice cut through the growing panic. This is a correction. The block is not destroying, it is resetting. The Arbiter turned to address the entire assembly. Delegates of the Senate, We are witnessing what appears to be a fundamental restructuring of our order. I propose an immediate recess to assess these developments. And what of the human? Demanded a delegate from a silicon-based species. What of her role in this disruption? All attention returned to Alara, still standing at the podium labeled Citizen of Earth. She took a deep breath, aware that her next words would echo across civilizations. I came here as a scholar seeking truth, she said. I stand now as witness to that truth's revelation. Earth's history, humanity's history, appears to be intertwined with yours in ways we never imagined. I don't claim to understand all the implications, but I believe we have an opportunity now to rebuild based on facts rather than convenient fictions. Mirathon nodded slowly. Wisely stated, Dr. Voss. The Senate will recess for one standard cycle. All delegations are instructed to remain aboard the Nexus. Emergency protocols are in effect. As the assembly began to disperse in a mixture of confusion, anger, and wonder, Alara felt a strange vibration from her chart, still illuminated by the source block's energy. The symbols were rearranging themselves, forming new patterns she had never seen before. It's updating, she murmured to Captain Niles. The chart is being corrected. Before he could respond, they were approached by Miru Than, accompanied by representatives from a dozen major factions, notably excluding the Zarnathi. Dr. Voss. The Arbiter addressed her formally. The Interim Council requests your participation in emergency deliberations. Your knowledge of Earth's history, combined with these revelations, may be crucial to understanding our path forward. Alara glanced at Niles, who gave a slight nod of encouragement. I would be honored, Arbiter, she replied, though I must warn you that I have far more questions than answers. As do we all, said Jikar, joining the group. But questions honestly asked are the beginning of wisdom. As they were escorted from the chamber, Alara cast one last glance at the source block, still pulsing with energy, still revealing its ancient truths to a Senate built on its deliberate misinterpretation. Whatever happened next would reshape not only Earth's place in the cosmos, but the very foundation of interstellar civilization. And somehow, improbably, she was at its center. The emergency deliberations took place in a chamber deep within the Nexus, a space of such perfect neutrality that it seemed to exist slightly outside normal reality. Representatives from each major Senate faction sat around a circular table that adjusted continuously to accommodate their various physiologies, while holographic interfaces displayed the ongoing effects of the source block's activation. The reset is comprehensive, reported a tech specialist from a highly cybernetic species. All military systems Senate-wide have been temporarily neutralized. Defensive capabilities remain functional, but offensive weaponry is offline. A forced peace, observed Mirithin. Fascinating. Or a prelude to invasion, countered a military strategist from a hive mind collective. We are vulnerable. Vulnerable to whom? Asked Jikar. The source block's actions suggest internal correction, not external threat. All eyes turned to Alara, who had been studying the data streams with intense concentration. The updated star chart lay before her, its symbols now stabilized into new configurations that were beginning to make linguistic sense to her trained eye. Dr. Voss, prompted Mirithan, your insights would be valued. Alara looked up from her work. I believe we're witnessing the activation of a fail-safe mechanism built into the original founding of the Senate, whenever that truly was. The source block appears to be a combination of historical record keeper and constitutional enforcement. And what constitution is it enforcing? Asked a representative from a gas giant species. That's what I'm trying to determine, Alara replied, gesturing to her chart. These symbols are resolving into something like a language now, or rather, the proto-language from which many galactic languages descended. It describes what it calls the Compact of Origins. And what does this compact stipulate? Mirithan leaned forward, cosmic eyes intent on the chart. From what I can decipher so far, it established principles for interstellar cooperation following Earth's first wave of cosmic colonization. It mandated preservation of historical truth, prohibited genetic and technological suppression of developing worlds, and required regular remembrance cycles where all civilizations would acknowledge their common origin. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. "If this is true," said Captain Niles, speaking for the first time since the deliberations began, "then someone deliberately violated these principles. Someone wanted Earth forgotten." "Not someone," corrected Jikar. "Some empire." The Zarnathi rose to prominence approximately 8,000 years ago, following the mysterious collapse of the previous dominant coalition. Their expansion coincided with the beginning of Earth's isolation. A data specialist projected a timeline showing the Zarnathi Empire's growth alongside Earth's decreasing interstellar presence. They systematically removed Earth from galactic affairs. Alara realized, but why? What threat did Earth pose? Perhaps not a threat, suggested Mirathon. Perhaps a constraint. If the original compact centered Earth as the cradle of all civilizations, it would have limited the Zarnathi's ability to establish hierarchical dominance. So they rewrote history. Ilara concluded, relegated Earth to primitive status, erased evidence of previous human civilizations, and positioned themselves as the natural leaders of cosmic order. The deliberations continued through what would have been night on Earth, with Ilara working alongside Senate scholars to translate more of the revealed text. As dawn broke on the Nexus's artificial cycle, a more complete picture had emerged, one that would forever alter humanity's understanding of its place in the universe. Earth had indeed been the origin point of interstellar civilization, with humans achieving spacefaring technology multiple times throughout their long history. Each cycle of advancement had ended in collapse, sometimes due to natural disasters, sometimes to war, occasionally to evolutionary divergence as off-world colonies adapted to new environments and eventually became new species. The Senate itself had been founded after the third such cycle, established by a coalition of human-descended species who recognized their common origin and sought to prevent the knowledge of Earth from being lost during future collapses. The source block had been created as both repository of this truth and enforcer of the founding principles. But as millennia passed and Earth experienced yet another collapse, the one known in human history as the fall of ancient civilizations, certain factions within the Senate saw opportunity. Chief among them were the ancestors of the Zarnathi, who systematically obscured Earth's central role, relegated humans to developing species status, and established themselves as the natural leaders of cosmic affairs. They didn't just rewrite history. Ilara explained to the Emergency Council as their findings solidified. They rewrote reality. They suppressed evidence of humanity's previous achievements, monitored Earth to ensure we didn't rediscover our legacy too quickly, and positioned themselves as the benefactors of a primitive species. But they couldn't alter the source block, added Jikar. It remained dormant but incorruptible, waiting for the right moment to reassert historical truth. And that moment came when humans once again reached a certain threshold of understanding, concluded Mirathon. When you, Dr. Voss, began to decipher the very language of our common ancestry. Ilara shook her head, still overwhelmed by the implications. I was just studying ancient texts. I had no idea. Intent is irrelevant to awakening, said a representative of a quantum state species, their form fluctuating between possibilities. Your work created resonance with the source block. Truth, recognized truth. As the emergency session prepared to reconvene the full Senate, Admiral Kravtzor made his move. The Zarnathi delegation, having retreated to their vessels during the recess, launched a desperate attempt to seize control of the Nexus and the source block. Warning alarms blared throughout the station as Zarnathi forces bypassed security protocols and deployed specialized technology designed to operate despite the source block's suppression field. They're trying to destroy the block, reported a security officer, rushing into the emergency chamber. They've deployed some kind of temporal disruptor. Mirathon rose immediately. Evacuate all non-essential personnel. Activate emergency containment protocols. As the council dispersed, Captain Niles grabbed Ilara's arm. We need to get you to safety. Doctor. No, she replied firmly, gathering her chart. We need to get to the source block. If the Zarnathi destroy it, all of this truth will be lost again, and Earth will be vulnerable to whatever retribution they decide to exact. Niles hesitated only a moment before nodding. Then we go together. The journey to the main chamber was chaotic, with delegates and staff rushing in all directions as security forces attempted to contain the Zarnathi incursion. When they finally reached the massive doors, they found them sealed by emergency protocols. "We can't get through," Niles said, examining the locking mechanism. "Perhaps I can assist," came Jikar's melodic voice as the shimmering being materialized beside them. "My people were keepers of pathways as well as memories." Jikar flowed into the locking mechanism, their malleable form interacting with the security system in ways Alara couldn't comprehend. Moments later, the massive doors began to part. "Hurry," urged Jikar, reforming beside them. "I cannot hold them long." They slipped through the narrowly open doors into the main chamber and into a scene of cosmic confrontation. Admiral Kravtzor stood on the central dais, surrounded by Zarnathi warriors in battle exoskeletons. Before them hovered the source block, now encased in a field of shimmering energy that the Admiral was attempting to penetrate with a device of obvious alien origin. "You're too late, human!" Kravtzor called out, noticing their entrance. "The source block will be neutralized, and the natural order restored." "Natural?" Alara challenged, moving cautiously forward with Niles and Jikar flanking her. "There's nothing natural about the lies you've built your empire upon." "Pragmatic, then," the Admiral conceded. "Do you think the cosmos cares about historical accuracy, about fairness? Power is the only constant. Dr. Voss, the Zarnathi have maintained stability for millennia while species like yours squabbled in primitive conflicts. While denying us our birthright," Alara countered, "our knowledge of who we truly are. Knowledge that would have destroyed you." Kravtzor's mandibles clicked in agitation. "Humans are simultaneously brilliant and self-destructive. Each time you've achieved greatness, you've annihilated yourselves shortly after. We didn't just suppress your history, we protected you from it." Before Alara could respond, the device in the Admiral's grasp pulsed with energy, sending a wave of disruption toward the source block. The ancient cube trembled, its symbols flickering as if fighting to maintain coherence. Acting on instinct, Ilara rushed forward, her chart clutched to her chest. Captain Niles shouted a warning, drawing his weapon to provide covering fire against the Zarnathi warriors who moved to intercept her. Time seemed to slow as Alara reached the dais, placing herself between the Admiral's device and the source block. The chart in her hands began to glow with the same energy that emanated from the cube, creating a feedback loop of resonance that amplified both. "Stop this," demanded Kravtzor. "You cannot comprehend the forces you're interfacing with." "Neither can you," Alara replied, her voice steady despite the energy coursing around her. "That's why you feared them enough to bury the truth." The source block's pulsing intensified, its symbols flowing directly onto Alara's chart and then back again, as if the two artifacts were communicating, sharing information at speeds beyond comprehension. The disruptor in Kravtzor's grasp began to falter, its energy field destabilizing. "What are you doing?" the Admiral growled, advancing toward her. "Nothing," Ilara answered truthfully. "I'm just allowing what was always meant to happen." In that moment, the main doors burst open completely as Miruthan arrived with a contingent of Senate security forces. The Zarnathi warriors, outmatched and with their weapons still suppressed by the source block's influence, were quickly contained. Admiral Kravtzor, seeing his plan collapsing, made a final desperate lunge toward Ilara and the source block. Captain Niles intercepted him, the two crashing to the floor in a struggle that ended with the Admiral pinned beneath the human's surprising strength. "Earth gravity," Niles explained with grim satisfaction, "makes us stronger than you expect." As the Zarnathi forces were secured, the source block's energy field expanded, enveloping Ilara completely. To those watching, she appeared suspended in a cocoon of light, her form transparent as information flowed through her. "Is she in danger?" Miruthan asked Jikar, who had approached the phenomenon with scientific curiosity. I don't believe so. The shimmering being replied. The block appears to be downloading its complete archives into her chart, and perhaps into her as well. After what felt like both an instant and an eternity, the energy field receded, leaving Alara standing on the dais, chart in hand, eyes wide with the knowledge of ages. Dr. Voss? Captain Niles approached cautiously after ensuring the Admiral was securely restrained. Are you all right? Alara nodded slowly, her gaze distant as she processed the vast influx of information. I understand now, she whispered. All of it. Mirathon stepped forward. What do you understand, Dr. Voss? Why the podium is labeled Citizen of Earth, she replied, her focus returning to the present. Not representative, not delegate, but citizen. Because Earth isn't just another world in the Senate, it's the founding world, the original source. She held up her chart, now permanently altered, its symbols stabilized into a complex but readable script. This contains the true history, not just of Earth or the Senate, but of all of us. Our common origin, our divergent paths, our potential futures. And what would you have us do with this knowledge? Asked Mirathon, their cosmic eyes reflecting the gravity of the moment. Alara looked around the chamber, at representatives of civilizations spanning the galaxy. All, she now knew, descendants of Earth in one form or another. Rebuild, not the old Senate based on hierarchical dominance, but a new coalition based on our shared heritage and equal standing. The source block pulsed once more, projecting a series of images above the assembly. Earth through various stages of development, human civilizations rising and falling, colonial expeditions venturing to distant stars, evolutionary divergence creating new species, and finally, the current moment, a critical juncture in cosmic history. The block agrees, Jikar observed. It has fulfilled its purpose in revealing the truth. Now it falls to us to determine what we build upon that foundation. In the days that followed, the Senate underwent profound transformation. The Zarnadi leadership was removed from power, though their civilization remained represented by reformists who acknowledged the historical deception. A transitional council was established to restructure galactic governance based on the principles revealed by the source block. And at the center of it all stood the podium labeled Citizen of Earth, no longer an anomaly, but a reminder of a shared cosmic heritage. 1 week after the dramatic confrontation in the Senate chamber, Alara found herself in a quiet observation lounge, staring out at the vast expanse of stars. The weight of her new knowledge had settled somewhat, though she suspected she would spend the rest of her life processing what the source block had shared with her. Contemplating your place in the universe, Dr. Voss? Mirathon's voice came from behind her. Alara turned to find the Arbiter and Jikar approaching, both seeming somehow changed by recent events, more open, perhaps more hopeful. Contemplating all our places, she replied. The scale of what's happened here, what it means for Earth, for humanity, for everyone, it's almost too vast to comprehend. Yet comprehend it we must, said Jikar. The Transitional Council has made its first decisions. I thought you should hear them directly. Mirathon nodded. The Senate will be reconstituted as the cosmic coalition of sovereign worlds, with Earth acknowledged as the origin world, but guaranteed no special authority beyond that historical recognition. Good, Alara said firmly. Earth doesn't need power or control, just truth. Truth that will now be shared, added Jikar. A delegation will return with you to Earth to establish formal diplomatic relations and begin the process of reintegrating humanity into cosmic affairs. How will Earth react, do you think? Asked Mirathon. To learn that they are not merely one world among many, but the ancestral home of countless civilizations? Alara considered the question carefully, with shock, initially, then wonder. Perhaps some fear, but ultimately, I believe, with a profound sense of connection to something larger than ourselves, which is what humans have always sought in looking to the stars. And you, Dr. Voss? Jikar's form shimmered with curiosity. What role will you play in this new era? Alara looked down at her chart, now transformed into what she understood to be the most complete historical record in known space. I'm a historian, she said simply. My job is to preserve and interpret the past so we can build a better future. That hasn't changed, only the scope of the history I'm responsible for. The Council would offer you leadership, Mirathon observed. The podium of Citizen of Earth could be yours permanently. No. Ilara shook her head. I'm not a politician or a diplomat. I'm a scholar. Let me document this transition, record this moment of cosmic reconciliation. Let me help humanity understand its true heritage. That's where I can be most useful. The Arbiter's cosmic eyes studied her for a moment, before they nodded in acceptance. As you wish. Though I suspect your influence will extend far beyond mere documentation. As they left her to her contemplation, Ilara returned her gaze to the stars, stars that she now knew had been reached by humans before, in cycles of expansion and collapse stretching back into deepest antiquity. The knowledge was simultaneously humbling and exhilarating. Captain Niles joined her a short time later, his formal military bearing somewhat relaxed after the events they had shared. Our transport leaves tomorrow, he informed her. We'll be the first official delegation from the newly formed coalition to Earth. Are you ready for that responsibility, Captain? She asked. About as ready as you were to address the Senate, he replied with a hint of a smile. Which is to say, not at all, but I'll manage. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the distant dance of stars and ships. What happens now, Dr. Voss? Niles finally asked. To Earth? To humanity? To all of us? Alara considered the vastness before them, the countless worlds that shared a common ancestry now rediscovered. We remember, she said simply. And then we begin again, not as strangers, but as family long separated, finally reunited. The source block, secured once more at the heart of the nexus, pulsed with quiet approval, its ancient purpose fulfilled, its cosmic truth revealed. And on a distant blue world, still unaware of its central place in the great story of intelligent life, humans continued to look up at the night sky, wondering if they were alone in the universe. They were not, they never had been, and soon they would remember why. In the years that followed, Earth underwent a transformation unlike any in its recorded history. The arrival of the coalition delegation, led by a human historian carrying an ancient star chart, initially created global confusion, followed by wonder, skepticism, and eventually, profound societal change. Dr. Ilara Voss became both celebrated and controversial as the bearer of humanity's cosmic truth. Museums worldwide displayed copies of her chart, now recognized as the Ancestral Codex, while scholars and scientists pored over the knowledge it contained, finding correlations with archaeological mysteries that had puzzled humanity for generations. Ancient sites, Göbekli Tepe, the Nazca Lines, the underwater structures off Japan revealed their secrets when viewed through the lens of the Codex, showing themselves to be remnants of previous human ascensions to the stars. Myths of floods and falls, of golden ages lost, took on new significance as records of actual cycles of civilization. The Cosmic Coalition established embassies on Earth, introducing humanity to their divergent descendants, some recognizably humanoid, others transformed by millennia of adaptation to alien environments into forms that stretched the very definition of life. These reunions were by turns joyous, awkward, and profound, as species separated by eons of evolution recognized their common origin. Earth itself was changed by this revelation. Nations that had warred for centuries found new perspective in their shared cosmic heritage. Resources previously dedicated to military competition were gradually redirected toward understanding humanity's recovered legacy and preparing for reintegration into galactic society. The podium labeled Citizen of Earth remained in the newly formed coalition chamber, occupied not by any single representative, but available to any human who wished to address cosmic affairs. It stood as a symbol, not of Earth's dominance, but of the enduring importance of remembering origins. And Alara, who had never sought to be at the center of cosmic politics, found herself nonetheless the custodian of a truth larger than any individual. She established the Institute of Recovered History, dedicated to integrating Earth's known past with the revelations of the source block, training a new generation of scholars to understand humanity's place in the universe. Sometimes, in quiet moments between public appearances and academic responsibilities, she would stand beneath the night sky, now filled with visible coalition vessels and the knowledge of countless civilizations descended from her own, and marvel at how a single ancient chart had changed everything. Not the chart. Captain Niles, now Admiral Niles, Earth's first representative to the Coalition Defense Council, would remind her when they occasionally met, your willingness to speak truth to power. But Alara knew better. It had never been about her, or even about Earth alone. It had been about the cosmic tapestry they were all part of, a story of origins and returns, of forgetting and remembering, of civilizations rising, falling, and rising again in an eternal cycle. A story that would continue long after she was gone, but that would now be told truthfully, with Earth acknowledged as the ancestral home that had seeded the stars with life. The source block, secure in its chamber at the heart of coalition governance, continued its silent vigil, ensuring that this time the truth would not be forgotten again. And across the vastness of space, civilizations that had once denied their common heritage began the long process of reconciliation, building something new upon the foundation of what had always been. For when the Cosmic Senate met and one podium was labeled Citizen of Earth, it had not been a mistake or an anomaly. It had been the beginning of remembrance, the first note in a symphony of cosmic truth that would resonate across the stars for millennia to come.